Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. More than half the year is over, so it is time to reflect on what have been some of my favorite reading experiences of 2024 thus far. Now, I do not rank these in any way whatsoever. I'm going to present them more or less chronologically in the order that I read them. But these are the reads that have just blown my mind, have given me such an emotional experience, or have challenged me intellectually, or I just found myself so deeply immersed in, or a combination of all these things and more. So let us get started. The first book I finished this year, and one of my very favorite reads of this year, of my life, is Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. This is the final book in the realm of the Elderlings, which in and of itself is pretty significant, I feel. It's the end of one of the greatest series of books ever written in the history of humanity. And if that sounds hyperbolic to you, well, probably it doesn't if you've actually read the series. It is just such a wonderful experience to have been on this journey of the realm of the Elderlings. And I do feel that Assassin's Fate brought it to a very satisfying conclusion. Of course, it's Robin Hobb, so there are going to be tears. There are going to be lots of emotions. Some of them are not happy, but that's the way it is. That's life. And Robin Hobb captures life in her gorgeous storytelling like no other. I just so appreciate that I have had the privilege to read this series, and I will be shouting about it and rereading it in the future for sure. Which reminds me, by the way, I'm not putting any rereads on this list. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Anyway, next on my list is the Bhagavad Gita. This is a part of the Mahabharata. Now, this is kind of a reread in a way, but I had not read this translation before, so I'm not counting it as a reread because I have read the Bhagavad Gita several times. I have read the Mahabharata. I have also read the Ramayana, in case anyone is curious. I'm a huge fan of these epics from South Asia. And the Bhagavad Gita in particular, I have found to be such a spiritual, beautiful experience reading this. It's about life. It's about how to live, how to confront one's duty, and how to reconcile oneself to doing one's duty in this life and whatever that may be. It's just a deeply philosophical, relevant for all of humanity, for all time kind of work. And I highly recommend you check out the Bhagavad Gita, at the very least, if not the entirety of the Mahabharata. But it is just such a fantastic, I mean, it's not a spoiler to say this is an episode during the Mahabharata, which is a war between two factions that are related to one another. And the protagonist here, Arjun, is questioning how he can possibly fight and kill people on the other side of the battle. These are people that he's related to. These are people, some of them are his mentors, people that he loves and cares about. So he has this whole dialogue with Krishna, who is acting as his charioteer. And it's just such mind-blowing stuff. And I also had the privilege to speak with one of the translators, William Wharton, of this particular edition of the Bhagavad Gita. I had the privilege to speak to him on my channel, one of the most wonderful conversations I've been in on YouTube, and I highly recommend you check it out. His experience as a Vietnam War veteran is one of the main reasons why he got into Sanskrit in the first place, and he was quite open about the fact that translating the Bhagavad Gita was an act of therapy for him. It was something that helped him to deal with his entire life, but especially what he participated in, what he saw during the Vietnam War. So just a really mind-blowing conversation. Highly recommend you check it out. Next on my list is Bold Ascension by Von Roycroft. This is one of my favorite self-published authors ever. Von just does some great stuff in here. If you love epic fantasy with a classical feel that has a very much grounded in historical inspiration, in this case, the interactions between the Goths and the Romans, this could be your jam. I mean, Von has done a great job. He hit it out of the park with The Severing Sun and the follow-up in Bold Ascension, which is, by the way, number 2 in the trilogy, his initial trilogy. He's got another trilogy in the works, but his initial trilogy, the Sundered Nation trilogy, this is book 2. And it's grander. It is more epic even than the first. The scale just widens in a way that I found so compelling. And there's some really great character work in here as well. If you like your heroes super complicated, then you're going to get a lot out of Bold Ascension. There's just some really compelling work done in this. highly recommend it if you are interested in supporting a most worthy self-published author. Well, speaking of self-published fantasy, I was very fortunate to encounter some fantastic stories in the course of serving as a judge for SPFBO 9, SPFBO being the self-published fantasy blog-off, a contest founded by Mark Lawrence. It is currently in its 10th iteration, and it is just such a privilege and an honor to be a judge for that contest. But I ran into some really great stories. Among them, the Wickwire Watch. This was just is a great. By the way, Jacqueline Hagan, the author, has just come out with her 4th book in the series. But the Wickwire Watch is a fantastic opening. It is kind of steampunk with some kind of horror elements thrown in there, but just some great Dickensian character work as well. I just fell in love with the main character as soon as he sprang forth from the page. Another one that I really enjoyed, and I do have a copy of this one, a physical copy, is Hills of Heather and Bone by K.E. Andrews. This is a story that is about life and death. It's about love and grief, just poignantly woven together in this gorgeous narrative about a wife and a husband. And they both have magical abilities. Hers happens to be an ability that is much persecuted in this world. And as a result, they are on the run. And this is the story of how they struggle to survive. And it's also very much a story about a marriage, the struggle. Even, of course, you love someone when you're in a marriage with them. Does that mean that every moment is going to be perfect? No. So it's just a really honest and tear-inducing portrayal of what I consider to be just a marvelous relationship. This was the only book in SPFBO 9 that brought tears to my eyes, in fact. So I really, really found it to be a deeply moving experience. And then there were a couple others that were standouts as well. J.D.L. Russell's book, The Last Ranger, the beginning of an epic fantasy series. He really nails in there. You can tell he's an experienced writer. It's a vast world that he portrays there with, I felt, a very flawed but compelling main character. This is a main character, the protagonist. I did not like her very much at all in the beginning because of her prejudices, let's say, and the fierceness with which she held on to those prejudices. But I found that Russell did a marvelous job in following up on that and taking me along on this journey and helping me to understand who this character was and where she's coming from. So really compelling read, I would say. And then finally, although I didn't read it this year, I actually read this last one last year, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention the winner of SPFBO 9, Murder at Spindle Manor by Morgan Stang. This is also a steampunk kind of vibe, but it's also very much a Agatha Christie style mystery with some, gothic elements. Some horror in there. Just a really fun read, though. Stang has a marvelous sense of humor, and it really shines in this book. And there are some serious moments as well. But that one actually won the contest, and it was the book that I myself put forward. I was the judge who put forward that book from the 30 books that I had to judge in the first round. And ultimately, it did go on to win the contest. So just to check out Murder at Spindle Manor if you haven't yet. And it's easy. You could read it in a day or two. It's very short, but a fun read. Finally, well, SPFBO 9, great experience. I'm looking forward to more great books for SPFBO 10. But let's talk about the next one. That is going to be One Piece. Of course, I'm going to talk about One Piece. I mean, this has been the experience of this year, to be honest with you. One Piece, it began for me as, and this, of course, keep in mind that I have read 5 manga before this, so I'm by far not an expert in manga, and I'm learning as I go. And I enjoyed some of the manga that I had read previously, especially Vagabond and Vinland Saga. I had a great time talking with Murphy Napier about those. But I decided to read One Piece this year. And it began for me as I was a little nervous, to be honest, thinking, I don't know if I'm going to like the humor. I don't know if I'm going to like the shonen, because most of the stuff I had read before was written for a more adult audience. And One Piece, at least, is labeled as a shonen, meaning that it's for a younger audience. Frankly, I think that's a mislabel, honestly. But anyway, I thought, okay, let's give it a try, and immediately loved the humor. I had a great time. It reminded me of reading Asterix when I was a kid. I just loved the humor. I thought, okay, I'm going to enjoy this, no doubt. And then I thought, wow, as I kept reading, there's real depth here. There are some really important, timely themes here. He's looking hard at some stuff that is very relevant to the world today, like othering and persecution and oppression, and just some really heavy, serious stuff. But in a way that is combined with that humor is done so effectively. It makes it so tolerable with the humor to look at that stuff. And then I thought, wow, not only is it funny and deep, but I feel so emotionally invested. And I got to the latest arc that I read, the Enies Lobby arc, which is part of the Water 7 saga. And I bawled my eyes out. I mean, it was just such an incredible experience. I'm so emotionally invested in this series now. I can't help but think, as I continue to read this, that it is going to be one of my favorite reading experiences of my life. And I'm just so happy that I'm reading One Piece. If you haven't tried it, don't knock it and give it a try, I would say, especially if you are in tune with your inner child and you're ready for a reading journey that is going to tug on your heartstrings in some really beautiful ways. So yeah, One Piece, I am sure at the end of the year that I'm going to have way more to say when I'm talking about my favorite reads of the year. But right now, just this is incredible. So yeah, and the next on my list is Grand Conspiracy by Jenny Wirtz. This is the 5th book in the Wars of Light and Shadow. Soon I'll be picking up book 6, Peril's Gate. Every book I read by Jenny Wirtz, I am so deeply impressed with her prose, her ability as an author. She is just one of those authors that I know that I could only dream of writing as well as this. I mean, her prose is so rich, and it's just so capable of expressing so many layers. It can be very emotional, it can be very intellectual, but it's just such an achievement that I can't stop talking about. How I believe that this series, Wars of Light and Shadow, is going to go down as one of the greats, up there with Realm of the Elderlings and the Malazan Book of the Fallen. It's just incredible. These are books that you cannot read fast, by the way. You cannot just binge these books. These are books that you have to sit down with, take seriously, focus on, ponder, and they're going to stick with you for the rest of your life. That's what kind of books these are. And so far, Grand Conspiracy, I think pretty much every book I read, I feel more deeply invested in this series. And Grand Conspiracy so far is probably my favorite of the series, to be honest. But I'm anticipating something special with Peril's Gate. We'll see. I hear that it's a real turning point in the series. So I'll be reading that soon. But for now, Grand Conspiracy is my choice for Jenny Wirtz. And another amazing author whose works I have talked about many times on the channel. I do not have my copy of the book with me because my daughter stole it. So there's an endorsement right there for you. She is also a fan of Mark Lawrence, but it is the book that broke the world, and it is just an incredible follow-up to the book that wouldn't burn, which is the first book in the Library Trilogy. I am not exaggerating when I say that my most anticipated book of next year, I'm already thinking, and I don't think anything's going to top this, is probably going to be the 3rd book in the Library Trilogy. Because the book that broke the world is just a marvelous follow-up to the book that wouldn't burn. It continues this otherworldly, amazing story, this blend of fantasy and science fiction and post-apocalyptic, who knows what. It continues this incredible exploration of these really important themes about knowledge and where it comes from and how it affects us, and how the more we know we don't know, and how knowledge can be dangerous, and just incredibly deep stuff mixed with this pulse-pounding story where I'm so attached to these characters, these beautiful characters. Lavira stole my heart, really, in the first book, but I want to find out what happens to her and Evar and the rest. So just an amazing combination. Mark Lawrence, I've said it before, but he is an author who somehow challenges me intellectually while giving me a page-turning story, and that is a rare combination. I have a lot of authors that I love who challenge me intellectually, But those stories tend to be slower paced for the most part. Then I have authors who I love because they give me that experience of being on the edge of my seat and wanting to, just rip through the book. And that's fantastic too. But Mark Lawrence does both for me. And that's such a rare combination that I love. And certainly the Library Trilogy has done that for me thus far. And then I read Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. What an amazing author. This was my first book by Octavia Butler, and I'm so deeply impressed, and I'm certainly going to go on to read more by her. I may read the follow-up to this first, or I may read Kindred. We'll see, but I'm definitely going to be reading more Octavia Butler. But this was just such a devastating read in some ways, but also because of the beautiful protagonist in here, Lauren Olamina. It is a story that has hope in it as well. It is a story that has beauty in it and courage. So I really appreciated that. It is set in 2024. It is post-apocalyptic, or it's kind of like sliding into the apocalypse, really, is what it is. And it was published in 93, so 2024 seemed a long ways off, maybe in 1993. But it's still a book whose warnings ring true. You could say that for sure. Very relevant, maybe actually more relevant than ever. And certainly a book that I would recommend to anyone to read. And then finally, my last selection for the books that have just blown me away so far in 2024 is going to be R. Scott Baker's The White Luck Warrior. This is the, second book in the second part of the second apocalypse. It is the Aspect Emperor is the second part of the second apocalypse series, which consists of 7 books at the moment. The first part is a trilogy, Prince of Nothing. The second part is 4 books that are the Aspect Emperor series. And this is the number 2 book, The White Luck Warrior. Baker is just such a brilliant, immensely talented author. I love what he's doing in Aspect Emperor. It's an engagement with fantasy as a genre, in a sense. It is highly subversive. A lot of stuff in here you can directly see him nodding to and subverting Tolkien in a way that is, it's affectionate, I think, but at the same time, definitely subversive. It is very bleak. It's a very bleak, just desolate world that we are in here. And I don't see much hope for humanity in here, but I'm beginning to feel that there maybe are hints here in The White Luck Warrior. I am seeing some of the characters empowering themselves, making decisions to empower themselves in ways that I do think maybe we're not entirely adrift at sea here. Maybe we're not entirely doomed, although it feels like we're mostly doomed. But Baker is just so talented that, I feel compelled to keep reading, even though it is depressing in many ways. But it's just so brilliantly done. It's an exploration of human nature like no other I've seen in fantasy, with the possible exception of Stephen Erickson's Malazan Book of the Fallen. But it is just that brilliant. I do feel that Malazan Book of the Fallen is actually a much more hopeful series than The White Luck Warrior is. Though both have their moments of pain and suffering and bleakness. But I'm compelled to keep reading this. I mean, Baker's just so brilliant. And it was a toss-up really between White Luck Warrior and The Judging Eye. Judging Eye being the previous book in the series. Both are just brilliant. This one had my head spinning at the end though, so I decided, just finishing it too. So I decided, well, it's going to be White Luck Warrior for now. But let's see. I'm going to finish the last 2, and let's see what I make of those. So those are my most compelling, awesome, mind-blowing, emotionally just powerful reads so far in 2024. I would love to hear about yours. Tell me about them, please, in the comments. And tell me what you think if you've read any of these or if you intend to read them. But that is it from me for now. Until next time.